Hello and welcome to Yappin with Yanna. Today we have a special and unique Yappin with Yanna session. So I have with me one of my YouTube faves, book reviewer, blogger. She's just all around awesome. And I'm gonna use her Instagram name, PS Musing. You may have seen that, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm Sandra. I don't, I do review books online on YouTube. I don't know if I would call myself a book reviewer. I kind of just try to share books that I like with people. Some people have asked me to share books I like, so I try to just do that. I don't know if I would. I'm like an official book reviewer, but it's something I'm doing for fun.
She is, guys. I said the same thing when I got, called about. I was like, I'm not. I found out I am. So you are. So
You
tonight,
are though.
tonight, and I'm saying night because I am recording this. My time is like 9:21, so I'm like, I'm here, y'all. I'm here, and I stayed up to make sure we got this in. So this video, there will also be a write-up with Big Beads and Reads. Normally we do a chat with authors, but today was different because I put out this, a warning or this request thing. Readers wanted because I wanted to discuss this book by Michael Todd called Relationship Goals. And I'm pulling this out of uh, Sandra's YouTube usual do where she will flip her book up. So I figured I'd do that tonight. But what I wanted to do was to have a conversation around this this discussion. And Sandra shared some things with me in our chats with that was unique to her. So we're gonna get into it. I hope you guys have seen it, but just I'll put all the information in the links. But Michael Todd is a very young pastor who is over Transformation Church. I want to say he recently came uh, the lead pastor last year or at the beginning, I mean, maybe the end towards 2019. But he's powerful, he is relatable, and he did a session for 8 weeks at Transformation on relationship goals, which basically brought us to this book that we have now. That is, I'm going to call it a resource tool for relationships. And here's the key about this book. And Chandra, you tell me if you got this from it, but this book is not just about relationships intimately. It's about relationships overall, whether it be with your
Definitely.
child, your family, your people that you work with, but most importantly, from the perspective of your relationship with God and yourself. So
Yes.
tell me, you said if this was a little different for you. Now, born and raised Catholic, however, I converted Baptist when I got a little older, and I found that it fed me. I do not believe Transformation Church is a Baptist church. I no longer focus on the denomination of a church. I focus on the
Okay.
message. So for me, it's not about religion. Religion, it is about relationship. So
Okay.
tell me what stood out for you with this.
Okay, so full disclosure, I am unchurched. Um, I guess I am a little bit of heathen, a little bit of a heathen, but I definitely am okay with, religious overtones in books. And and I mean, honestly, not even like specific to Christianity. I'm okay with all religious overtones in books. I try to, be open-minded.
Uh-huh.
So I did try to, in the beginning of the book, he asks that, whether or not you're Christian, whether or
Mm-hmm.
not you're a believer, just to go on this journey as a believer. So I did try to go on this journey as a believer. And I don't know. I think I did get some things from the book. And there were some good things in the book, especially what you talked about previously with your relationship with yourself. Um, And he did have some good messages. There were some messages I quite connect with, but I guess we'll talk about that.
Definitely. We definitely will talk about that. Um, so one of the things that this video did for me, so last year, right around the time COVID started, myself, my husband, we've been married this year 21 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were contemplating last year just calling it quits. And I was in NACO's reading group, and we were like, okay, um, one of the readers recommended the video. And if you know anything about NACO, she's like deeply into her faith. And so she'll watch different videos for different pastors. And that was one that she suggested. So we all jumped on it. We did the prayer devotional, we did all of it. And it gave a lot of insight, the YouTube video. So we all just was like, oh, you know what? I'm buying the book. So we got the study guide, the book, and
Oh,
I
there's a
bought it.
study guide.
Uh-huh. I bought it.
I didn't
And it
know
said that I hadn't dealt with that because I watched the videos. I was like, yeah, I'm good right now. Well, a few weeks ago, the beginning of this month, I just felt it nagging at my spirit to open that book again, um, just focusing on my daughter's 27, my husband and I are going to 22 years, um, just relationships. I can be very rebellious. So being the eldest child, sometimes I can withdraw because I don't want anybody around me. I just want to be by myself. So I was like, okay, we need something. I sat there, I did a little meditation, I journal, right?
that.
And that book just jumped out at me. And so I said, okay, let's revisit it. And when I got into it, and you know me, I love to read. Certain books I will not just run through because if they're gems for me to grab, I
Yeah.
can't just read it like I would my fiction books, right? So my Todd, I just felt like his message was powerful. One of the messages that I grabbed when he talks about self was he said something along the lines, if you can't stand to be with yourself, how can you expect someone else to be able to stand to be with you? And the
That is so important.
right, it's like self-love is so important. You mentioned you're unchurched, but if you've ever heard the scripture or the commandment, love your neighbor as you love yourself, I often stand back from that because I'm like, the reality in this world is some people don't love themselves.
They don't. They themselves. But see, okay, so when I was reading that portion of the book, that's another thing that stood out to me too. Um, because I think it focused on the fact that you can't love somebody fully if you aren't connected with yourself, if you don't love yourself. But then I thought about the reverse. Like, I know some people who I feel like don't love themselves, don't value themselves, and they show other people all kinds of grace, all kinds of love, all types of it's just trash people that they're letting into their life because they don't love themselves, but they're going above and beyond. So I think it's also that you can't set boundaries for yourself either, if you don't love yourself, just because you don't value yourself. So when he talked about that, I tried to think about both sides. Um, uh-oh. Okay. Oh, does it switch screens?
It does, it does, it does.
Oh, cool.
I thought that was a great segue to our next conversation too, because I think that was the piece right there when we talk about grace, when we talk about how you show up, right? And I took a lot of things into mind. Uh, maybe some chats that I've had with people or different things that I've read or heard or recalled hearing or what have you. And when you think about the idea of relationships and the goal of being in a relationship, like as a mother, I used to say to my daughter, what would make me a good mommy? And when she named those things, like me yelling, because it intimidated her, made her really uncomfortable when I became upset. And again, it took communication, and it took for her to say, and me not to feel offended by it, but to receive
Yes.
it and then put the word love into action, right? Literally making those and intentionally making those changes to develop a better relationship with her. And so when we think about, because our perspective of what our role is, right, may not be fitting to the persons or individuals around us that we care about. Maybe you're a leader on your job, and your perception of being a leader is being the boss or being a boss. That might not fit with the people that you're supposed to be leading, managing, nurturing, being a mentor for. There's different perspectives, and sometimes it just makes it all clash. So I think that a lot of things that I got out of here, and of course I have some notes, but from highlights in the book or what have you, but there were just so many gems for me. And if we didn't even just focus on the spiritual aspect of it, when he mentioned about marriages aren't whole because they have a lot of holes in them, right?
Yes.
And that was a quote that I kind of hung on to, because when you think about it, you think about everybody's background, you think about where they came from. I think I saw a quote or something on Instagram a while ago that said, everybody wasn't raised to love or with love. They were raised like in survival mode. So they come from
Yes.
a different angle.
I think that was um, a very important message. Just because I do feel like people feel like, you know, sometimes relationships are the missing piece in their life.
Yes,
And what he stressed was your life has to be whole. Like you have to be whole. And then two whole people can come together.
there you go.
Um, but when you have these people who, are not raised in love, who don't know love, who can't identify love,
Mm.
it, and they don't know how to love themselves or other people, um, that is true that they just come to the relationship and they're looking for that to feel them, and it's such an unfair expectation for somebody to make you whole. And I think that came across very well, in this book.
He
But
basically he takes a lot of things, and basically, and I love that his analogies, you can't help but connect because they're so real. They're like so
they were really
relatable.
good.
Yeah, they
They
were.
were.
He
Were.
mentioned
So I definitely got that out of the book about the well, full disclosure. I'm currently going through a divorce. Um, and I think that one of the things that spoke to me the most reading this book was the portion of, coming to a relationship whole. And when I got married, I mean, I wasn't super young. I was 27, 26, something like that. Um, but I hadn't had a whole lot of relationship experience prior to that. And I don't think that, my ex-husband had a lot of relationship experience prior to that either. And I think that, both of us were looking to be things, or looking for the other to be things to us that just weren't possible. That we really had to find, in ourselves. So I did definitely feel like that resonated with me
I think the
when you
part
talked
that
about that.
yeah, I think the part that he speaks about in general is how there's society kind of has it twisted, right? And we all act off of the feeling, the emotion of love. but not really understanding what love really is. My pastor, my home pastor, actually did maybe 8 weeks, as a matter of fact, session called Love Therapy, and he was explaining how what love really is. You know, he went so in depth to it, and it again, it's not an intimate thing, right? It's not just a focus on marital relationships, but a
Right.
lot of your relationships, including your marriage, will suffer because of relationships that you've had that weren't even
Yes.
intimate relationships, right?
Right.
I
Just trust lost in
exact
people.
yes, yes, yes. That in, you know, various issues in relationship, like with your parents, right? Um, Not being raised or what you perceive to be what a relationship should be. Mike Todd said, the things we tend to celebrate are built on unstable foundations and are bound to eventually fall. And I highlighted that. That was one of my first highlights. And my response to that in my notes was, especially when you're both immature and only relying on a feeling, which is what you and I are referring to, that feeling, love has to be more than that. I mean,
It does. It does.
the
It
heart
has
can be
to.
so deceiving.
It really can, and it has to be. It has to have like a little bit of toughness to it. It has to
Definitely.
be able to endure some things. Um, and I think that you know, especially one of the things he talked about, where we see relationship goals and we only focus on
Right.
the
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 celebrity pictures.
the happy moments, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's showing their happy moments, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to
Mm-hmm.
be
Mm-hmm.
able to move past that, those happy moments. And when love gets ugly, when the relationship gets ugly,
Good, the bad, the
are
ugly.
yes, the ugly, are you going to be able to endure? And are you going to be able to still love that person? And I think that that is one of the major points of the book, is to get us out of the facade of love and into what love actually is.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% there. Um, he said something else that stayed with me, which I find to be true, and I've always said. My sister and I had recently talked about this, and he said, nobody really explained relationships to me, right? That's all of us. That is all of us. What we've done throughout our lives is just kind of peeked into everybody else's. Like you said, the facade, right? Whether it's celebrities that we're admiring, or maybe our grandparents, or even our parents. But
Yes.
all we see is what they've allowed us to see. We didn't see what was going on in the background. We
No.
don't see the disagreements and, like you said, the hard, the ugly part of it, right? Which it can get ugly sometimes, where it ain't all smooches and pooches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It literally get down and knitted, kind of gritty at times. But sustaining after that, sustaining the blows, the negative comment, but even more so, I think I would describe love as being able to still, and I know for a fact I can say that I know that love, because I used to say about my baby sister. She and I used to clash for years until she got pregnant. We would clash because she used to really get under my skin. And I said, Grandma, is it possible to love somebody but not like them?
Yes.
And that was the key right there for me. That was one of my first realities of what relationship is. Both of my sisters know they can work on my nerves as I can work on theirs.
Right.
However, and anybody else is my child, my husband, my mama, I'm gonna work on everybody's nerves. But if you could still love me in the midst of me being that annoying person, or like I can love them in spite of, and still be able to be kind, not hitting below the belt while I'm intentionally trying to tear them down. Those kind of things are what really matters in relationships, and how you build them and sustain them. So I think I almost even feel like, let's just take the word love out of relationships when we're talking about relationships go, what do we have in common? What do we both want? What can we both strive for? You know what I'm saying? What can we work for in our relationship? Even if it's a work relationship, can we work and agree upon building each other up, supporting each other, having each other's back, teaching each other, that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? What was one of the things that stood out for you in this book that you were like a aha moment?
Hmm. Okay, I had a few things that stood out for me. But some of them I don't think that they were I don't know what to do with them because like I said, I'm a church, so I don't know what to do with them. So he talks in the book about dating with purpose
Mm.
and how dating, you should only date with the intentions of marrying, because that's the way God wants this, us to date. And we should not date recreationally. So I don't know how to feel about that because like I said, I am, I as a person who is out, fresh out of divorce, like who is just tiptoeing back into um, the dating scene, and it's changed in the last 10 years. It's different. Um, it's way different. And I know that I'm ready for serious dating. So I guess one of the questions is what do you think about that? Is that the way what you think God intended? Or how do you feel about recreational dating? Is that something we can?
I didn't even think, I never even considered it like that because, and I think he mentions this too. When you're coming up, they tell you don't get too serious about, one person. And I'm not gonna say I disagree. I'm gonna say I
I
have a
do.
difference. No, well, here's what I'm saying is that I have a different view on it when we talk about age versus, you know what I'm saying? Because the idea of dating, so many people's households will tell their 16-year-olds that they can start dating, right? Well, it's not with the intent of that being the person that you're going to marry, you know, when you're of age.
Right.
So I don't know that I am totally in agreement. There are some parts of it that I can certainly relate to, but it's like I think it depends on the individuals and basically having a mutual understanding of what your intentions are, right? So you don't want to come into any relationship without knowing both parties are on the same page.
Okay.
Because like
Is that I don't know. I didn't read the Bible. Is that biblical that recreational dating is
I know
frowned upon?
I can't say that that's what I've ever gotten from the Bible.
Okay.
That's just me. So and I'm not I'm gonna use the term holy roller. Because listen, we all fall short. Um, and so I don't judge relationships. I don't judge people that are living or in same sex relationships.
Me
I
neither.
don't stand there to judge. I believe that a pastor's job is to give you the message. And we all have a choice. We're all given choices. We all have to make personal decisions and choices for ourselves. And what you do with it, it's never optional, but it is an option. It is, you can take it or you don't. And it's only between you and God at the end of the day. That's my take on it.
Okay.
Um, I'm I don't stand in judgment of anybody else because who am I? Who am I? So um and this
I
this
did
one.
like the part where he said about, if you are a person who is looking for a long-term relationship, if you are, if you have the intent of marrying and you are not dating intentionally, if you are not, you're allowing tiny house, so you have all the benefits of marriage with no marriage, and you 7, 8 years pass and you have not gotten married. Um, I think that would be a lot of, an aha moment for a lot of my friends because I think that, sometimes we do allow that to happen.
Right.
Um, I'm always racing. I'm like, this, this, I know that he, as a pastor, probably, does not condone like living together prior to marriage.
Right.
But I don't know, kind of some benefits in that. So, but I think that the concept was definitely, about, what did he described it like as an aim, like an archer. When you can't hit your target because you haven't,
Yes.
defined your target
Yes.
well, and
Yes.
everybody isn't on the page. And I think that really applies that, example of how you let so much time pass and you haven't ended up where you wanted to be. And then you look up and all you wasted time. So I thought that was definitely a good way to think about it, setting goals and setting a timeline.
Exactly.
And if you are not meeting that timeline, then you need to either take action or step away.
Yeah, he actually in a YouTube video he used an illustration, a YouTube video, a video where the archer was actually blindfold and
Oh,
um and taking these, and basically she's hitting cars, or she's in this park and she never, like you said, never hits a target. And I think many of us go through life like that, just walking around here blind, not even
right.
knowing what goals there are to set. I like how he broke down that we have some unrealistic goals, right? We have this list
Yes.
of desires, wants, and all of it is so irrelevant. And I recently, these last few years of my daughter growing and becoming a woman, I encouraged her. A lot of my fiction reading has led me to have a greater perception of the conversations I should have had with her and should be having with her in terms of getting into a relationship, making certain that you're compatible, making sure that you guys can laugh together, making sure that you know each other well enough to have a good healthy relationship where
Yes.
there's laughter, there's balance, there's compromise, there's an understanding. There's so much more that goes with the idea of being in a relationship. But again, for me, I think it is so important that every individual can be in a relationship with yourself, even date yourself, right? Like literally being able to stand in the mirror and not need validation from other people.
Yes. The portion of the book where you talked about the importance of the single stage, that is where you find yourself. Um, I think that I don't talk about other books, but even in fiction books, like
Even in
you
fiction, right?
see, I'll just take Leftover for example, and you see, that characters spend a period of time by themselves where they're working through all of the issues, the insecurities, the um, preconceived notions that they have. And I you do probably when you're by yourself. It's when you can set realistic goals, realistic goals have to be realistic, realistic expectations. And I think that he did a really good job of outlining. What do you say? It's invest time. It's in time to invest in yourself.
And yes, right. That's
Um,
exactly how he described it. And I think
I,
that's key.
and I think, especially young, but even coming out of a relationship, it is time to invest in
Absolutely.
yourself. So,
spend time
which is
with
why I'm like,
yourself, like
I
me.
don't know if I'm ready for serious, dating. I need to learn the dating scene again. I need to see, now as a mother of a toddler, what it is I'm even looking for. So I think that eye time, he called it eye time,
Yes,
is
yes,
very important.
yes, yes, yes. I like that those emphasis that he put on that. And even with the even church thing, he hit a few pointers where he was kind of calling some things out. He pointed out we live in a world that has more and more relationships and less love, more and more sex and less intimacy. And see, people associate intimacy with sex.
They do.
And it's so much more deeper than that. It can be conversation, it can be just a simple touch, a hug. It's not always, it can literally just be laying together. You know what I'm saying? Like, say you're watching a movie, right? And you're just kind of laying on that person's lap. That's intimacy.
It
And
is.
there are so many ways of looking at things. And again, I feel like society has um, painted images that are so miscued,
Yes, I
and
agree with that
it has us
completely.
all with, like you said, unrealistic relationship goals. You see a good picture of what? Let's see, some celebrity couple, Denzel and his wife, or but again, every relationship, even mother and daughter. I mean, we would think Beyonce and her mom just have the perfect relationship. But trust me, we know there is a clash sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Those growing
Yes,
pains.
yes,
So
yes. I mean, my daughter is a toddler, but I know, even with, I had babies late. I had, she's 2.5. I had her when I was 33. So even with becoming a mother for a first time, there's growing pains there because my mom, my mom doesn't think, you're not doing it right. You're not doing the way I would have. But mom, this
exactly.
is my kid. But you're welcome to help always, always. But so there are all kinds of growing pains and those types of relationships too. But I think one of the more important things he talked about with intimacy is learning that person's love language. Um, because you got to love people the way they want to be loved, not the way you want to love them. And I think that those things are what helps build intimacy. It lets them know that you have their best interests, you understand them.
Right, right, right.
um, and it lets them know that even if they're not comfortable loving this way,
Right, right,
you're willing to make that sacrifice, which you talked about a lot in the book. There's no love without sacrifice.
right.
um, or you can't, I guess you can't even really define yourself as in love until you have made some sacrifices for that person. And that is one of the sacrifices, just being, even if it's something I'm not comfortable doing, I'm going to do it because I know it's important to you. So I did like when you talked about that. That was not how movement.
I love, there was so many things. And let me tell you, I was convicted on one because um so I'm like what, 44. And like I say, my daughter is 27. And I wouldn't necessarily say I pressure her, but I do. I, I am so guilty of one of the things that he pointed out, talking about how your parents keep pressuring you to hurry up and marry someone because they want grandkids while they're still young and enough to enjoy them or what have you. And I even wrote a note. I'm guilty of this, more so not wanting my child alone in this world. If if I was not to be in it, wanting her to experience real love. But even more so, I'm gonna tell you this. So I had my daughter, and I've put this all on in Facebook. I've had discussions about it. I had my daughter my senior year in high school. I was 16 when I got pregnant, 17 when I had her. And at that time, I felt like, oh, my poor life is over. It's just the biggest mistake,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But the greatest blessing that came out of that is my daughter and I were raised together. I mean, literally, a village raised us. And because of that, I now have a greater perspective um, and appreciation for what being a mother is, even now. And like I said, I'm 44, she's 27. We're like best friends,
Yes.
and I now look at friends, cousins who are my age and they have kids, like you said, toddlers, elementary school, and they're
Yes.
catching hell. And I'm sitting here like,
Kids are wearing us out.
and it's society as well because we didn't have those electronic devices back then. See, my baby, we read books together. If she had a reading assignment, I bought two books because she hated reading. She still does not like it. But I found ways to make it interesting enough for her. When we would take trips out of town, would take her and my little cousin for the bonding purpose, of two little kids. But again, now, these people that are older having these younger kids, it's like, yeah, girl, I need an edible just to get through the day. I'm like, what?
Yeah. These kids be
So,
wearing me out.
yeah,
I have one kid, and I'm like asking my siblings, like, yo, I need a niece, a nephew, or something for this kid to play with. Um, I'm on the end of my rope. So no, but
yeah.
it's great. And it's twofold because the energy level not as high. But
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like I have wisdom. I have life experiences. I have things that I can teach and share. And, I've been psychic her. Um, it's it because like you said, you and your daughter you guys grew together, learned together. Um, that's a lot of energy. I have things that I can teach my daughter, but man, it's hard to keep up with her. So it's a trade-off. I
Hmm.
definitely could use a. I can see why they need those edibles.
there was um there was a word that he used, ugly, right? He was talking about the good, bad, the ugly, and he broke the word ugly down. You gotta love yourself. And I thought that that word just I've used it so many times since reading it to encourage and lift someone else because we kind of fall short. We're giving ourselves grace while we've given it to everybody else. And that
Yes,
that saying where you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Um, the way God created you wasn't a mistake. Remembering that when he made us, he created us, it was good. You know what I'm saying? There were just so many things that he pointed out that even again, and I'm gonna give us another transparent moment. So in growing up Catholic, um, in my latter years, not too long ago, I actually taught religion in the Catholic schools. And so there was always a personal conviction to live life a certain way because I would feel like a hypocrite. Now, I was always somebody that looked down on anybody who preached the word and couldn't live it. Because it's like, how you going to speak
right.
if you can't, So it was a personal commitment for me when I chose to be that for those kids, in which I saw it's a good thing because having morals is grounded to a certain degree in understanding where you come from, how you come from, and it ties in with a lot of things. But again, like I said, I was never big on religion, but relationships. And so that's why this always jumped out to me. Um, when he talked about how what he's doing in his church now for people that want to be in relationships that come in. It's almost like a mentorship type program where they can date again with intention, but getting to know each other. And see, I've read things from other sources, like I said before, with talking about soul ties when you become intimate with someone else, right?
Okay. Yes.
Have you heard those things before?
So remember, I said I had to phone a friend because I'm like soul ties. What are we doing here? I have heard of them, and I don't. I maybe you can explain soul ties to me a little better. I got what he was saying, but I don't think that was something I've ever experienced.
So, my understanding with soul ties, we're literally talking about such a deep connection where it's almost on a spiritual level where you can't even be away from this person. We are always feeling them. There's a need for you to pray for them more than you even pray for yourself, or it's just so many
Okay.
aspects of it.
See, I
Where
didn't get that. Okay.
what was the
So that's
perception
what
you
you
got from it?
see. I thought that soul ties were coming, I could be wrong, but soul ties were coming from sexual acts with, and that's why he was saying that it was so important not to casually have sex because you end up with all these various soul ties to, people that you really shouldn't be connected to.
Right. And that's why I said from the spiritual standpoint, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of places where I've seen this outside of this particular book have said the same thing, where, so you're having sex with this person that have had these issues. It's almost like when you think about STDs and how you're tying this to this to this to this, and it's like a continual, loop or what have you, where if you
Mhm.
had sex with this one, you technically had sex with whoever they had sex with. Those soul ties, it's like you're entwining so much that's going on with perspective, having their body inside of your body, or there being a trade of fluids and all that other stuff. There were so many conversations, and to a certain degree, I can see that. I can see where that type of intimacy is so deep that it's a deep, deep, deep connection. It's a real deep tie. But there's a lot of tricky. I'm not even gonna call it tricky. There's a lot of debatable topics.
See, yeah, and I think that that's one of them. I copied that and pasted it to like several group chats. I was like, guys, what are we doing here? What are you guys thinking here? Have you experienced this? Because I
What was
don't think
some
I've
of the feedback
experienced
that you
that.
got?
Some people said that they had experienced soul ties, just with being unable to shake an ex, like they were, you know, and they that tied to them clouded their judgments and things, moving forward in other relationships.
How about that?
Some people were saying, I don't know what you're talking about because, honey, I've had my one night stand, I've had this, I've had that, I don't have any. And so I got, both ends of the spectrum. So I don't know. I didn't know what to think about that one. I don't know that that's something that I feel like I've experienced.
Mm. And that could be it too. I don't think I have either.
No, really.
I don't no, I don't think so. I don't think I look at myself, my older self, and I reflect back on my younger self and the decisions and all of the people that I may have, encountered along my life. And again, the way that you think, the perception that you have, I can recall um being very judgmental. To a certain degree, I may still carry that characteristic a little bit, not intentionally, but um, when I think about how I was back then, like you said about wisdom, we've matured, we've
Yes.
grown, we've had quite enough experiences where our perception is now a lot different than what it
Life
had.
will humble you.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And
It humbled me.
he talks about that where he says, don't allow the pain from past relationships to make you forfeit your future ones, right? But again, I am in a place in my life where I know God has literally allowed me to experience so many things just to appreciate what he's about to do, or what's coming into my life
Right.
soon. And when you have that kind of perspective um, on the things that you are actually going through in life, it just it makes you welcome all of the experience, like you said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it's making you stronger, it's making you better. I'm sure now that you've experienced the side of marriage, and now with divorce, there are a lot of things you'll do differently going
So many
forward.
things. So many things.
It's like they said in
But
hindsight.
one of them, like I said, I'll have to talk about that casual dating. I don't know in my life right now. That's what I can give. Um, and I'm not ready to jump out there and commit wholeheartedly to someone, uh, especially with a toddler. I can't, sacrifice bedtimes, bath times, all those things to put in the work necessary to build a relationship.
Mm.
So I don't think that I'm in, any other phase outside of casual dating right now.
It's so funny. So, I'm with you. I hate to do what I'm doing because it's fiction, but I was reading a book today. I finished it today. I had started it maybe yesterday, but I finished it today because I had so much to
Knock
do.
these books out.
The Mother and the Gentleman by Takora Davidson, Takora Muni. So I read that book, and it was the same situation like yours. Even though she wasn't previously married, she had four kids, a set of twins for one guy, and then kids for which who was the love of her life, and he died, right?
Oh,
And then she got with another guy who just didn't do right by her. And so now this guy who came up in the street life, who did his thing or what have you, but he
okay.
he changed. He's now mature. He's investing in his community, and he's doing his thing. And he was interested in her. And the girl prior to that he was kicking it with, he broke it off with her because she said the same thing you were. I'm not ready for commitment. I'm not ready to be in this thing. But again, his non-negotiable was he's no longer interested and not in just being in a relationship, just being. He's ready to build a family. He's ready to settle.
Okay.
And again, we're talking about. I brought that up to say that where we started off with this conversation is in being intentional. Both parties, everybody knowing where they stand. Um, the idea of going on a job and saying, "Oh, I ain't here to make friends. I'm just here to get my money. I'm here to get my coins." But again, realizing God does not intend for us to be alone in anything. We're gonna always need someone. But again, in your wisdom, you should know who you should and shouldn't, really deal with and
Yeah.
get those vibes. I like I said, for me, the most important lesson that I got from this, and the one that I focused on for a long time because I had to get to a point now, and when I got in my 40s, I did that, focused on me, the relationship with myself. I became a person, I became a mother and a wife young, and my goal was always as long as they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was very unrealistic because when they were not happy, like, what do you do? Do you just be unhappy because they're unhappy? So at some point, you have to define What makes you whole? What makes you happy?
Right.
What about you do you love? And for me, with this relationship goes, I think that was the most important piece. Um, and again, like I said earlier, I am very spiritually grounded, so my relationship with God is so important to me. It is the reason why I am sane. you know, from experiencing grief, going through depression as a result of losing my dad, losing his sister, who's my aunt, just experiencing things in life. And so
Yeah.
I cannot imagine not having a relationship with God where I can talk, because even in my marriage, I am not um, comfortable talking about everything with just anybody. You know what I'm saying? So having that relationship with God and knowing that I can trust Him, that He hears me, He will direct me, He will guide me. That's part of my faith. That's a part of my walk in
Okay.
life. So it works for me. Um, Share with us some things that you feel like was a benefit for you with reading this book, that maybe you can either encourage someone else or incorporate into your own life. Did you get any of that from the book?
A benefit that I can incorporate into my own life. I mean, because of the place that I am in life, that focusing on myself, relearning what I want uh, for myself, out of a relationship, setting realistic goals, realistic expectations. That part is important. I think that I had my group chat about that. I think I like to copy and paste portions of the book and share it with people and see what they think. Um, and we talked about how sometimes women are like super flexible with their standards. Um, he talked about setting standards for yourself. And in his example, he gave an example of a woman who had completely unrealistic standards.
Right.
But even she needed to change her standards. But even like if women have, you know, realistic standards, we are super flexible with our standards. And in my recent dating experience, what I've learned is, men are not flexible in their standards the way we are. Um, Very similarly, I talk to men and they decide, well, for her, I'll throw X, Y, and Z standard away. Um, so I definitely take that away to go through my standards to they're reasonable and to stick firmly by them moving forward. Um, what else did I take away from this book?
My pastor would call that the non-negotiables.
Yes, yes. Um, and really try to. He did talk about how women get tripped up. Well, I say, yeah, women get tripped up because it's like, well, no, he obviously does not have, this one standard that was important to me, but I'll make a concession. And the next thing you know, you look 5 years and he still does not have that standard, especially if it's something critical, like I don't want to get married and you do want to get married
Right.
and you try to change him. Like,
Right.
I think he talked about how it's just, you got to, another thing he talked about is constantly evaluating or reevaluating um, in relationships in general, where you guys are and if you are, this person, if you're useful to each other. Um, I mean, he talked about that in that instance where him and his wife had the friends
Uh-huh.
that were well, uh, how he had them, do the 90 day
Right.
It was kind of like a 90-day trial
Yes, yes, yes.
period where they, I don't know, with this dating, getting to know each other thing.
Uh-huh.
I thought
Right.
that was actually very useful. Um, his views on sex, I don't know what I could take from that, but
The 90-day part, what I took from that one was so you don't waste more time.
yeah.
And for me, that was real crucial. That was real key. I think my daughter did that with this particular relationship that she's in before she even bothered to uh, introduce him to our family. She took the time
Oh,
to get to know
okay.
whether or not he was even worth her time.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I thought that
Are
was
you dying?
excellent.
I feel like my mother, I mean, my mother is much older than me. So my mother is 62, maybe 61, something like that. I feel like she would be like, so when are we gonna meet him? When are you gonna bring him over? Like she's not
She
patient.
she let her friends kind of vet him first, male and
Oh,
female
really?
friends. Yeah, she did that. She brought him around her male and female friends first. But my daughter and I are so close. She tells me every
So it's almost like you met him anyway.
everything, right? And so, I told her at the end of the day, no matter what I think and what I say, all your relationships are up to you. Even she'll call me about advice for with, even with her for friends, relationship with her girlfriends or what have you. And, I always say, because she was like, "Mom, give me your opinion. Because I know you're going to tell me if I'm right, if I'm wrong." And like I'll tell her at this point, it's not a right or wrong, but it's what you feel you can accept and what you feel you can relate to, what you're willing to deal with, but in all actuality, sometimes we do need that person to love us enough to check us
Yes.
and tell us, right from wrong, to be able to guide us and help us because we're all flawed, so if we don't have someone that loves us enough in our life to just keep it real with us, I think that's where we get these misperceptions of who we are. We can't even identify ourselves because again, we're still seeking some sense of validation for the world. We're looking for the likes, the applause, the thumbs up. When what we really need is no, you need to get off that, computer and you need to study, or, no, I think it's foolish for you to think that a person can only love you if their bank account has a certain amount of money in it. You know what I'm saying? Just being
Yes.
realistic. It's just about, and again, sometimes it comes from wisdom because if you're trying to get advice from, if you're 20 and you're going to another 20-year-old,
God bless the 20-year-olds.
because my 20-year-old, so girl, listen,
Oh
I could just
God.
snatch her back. Like, girl, what were you thinking?
Right?
Oh, Jesus.
No, that's definitely true. Definitely true. Oh, now just about some parts of the book. Wait, hold on. He talks about divorce and how the only reason or acceptable reason for divorce is infidelity, adultery.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that biblical?
It is biblical. It is, and even with physical abuse, they talk about you separating. Um, yeah, I have miscued views around that area of marriage and divorce. I cannot lie. For me personally, I look at there's been a lot on my mind over the years. And again, if we think about marriage in terms of the biblical sense of how Jesus loved the church, when we think about the life that we're supposed to live, when we think about our purpose for being created, all of those things, again, there are a lot of biblical aspects of it. And I mean, as a Christian, what we're taught is if you want to know how to live your life, the Bible is what the acronym, or the word Bible has an acronym that says basic instructions before leaving earth. Um, and what it's really about is the idea and the concept of understanding and knowing that everything that's in the Bible, I mean, every single situation. I remember when I taught religion class, I used to tell my babies because they were watching, they were these like 7 and 8 graders, they were watching shows that were really inappropriate. Like they were watching Scandal, talking about Olivia Pope and all this stuff. And I was like, let me tell you something. If y'all really want us to know about a scandal, the biggest one you could find is in the Bible. And they were like, Miss Yanna, for real? No, for real. So I gave them a challenging assignment where the TV shows that they watch, right? Give the title of the TV show to biblical scripture. And when I tell you they wowed me, there is a biblical scripture where we talk about someone that is a liar, these brothers that lied, and Joseph sold their brother, right, into slavery. So they use Pretty Little Liars. There was some little show that they were watching, and that's what they pulled the title. I even pulled the title. There's a part in the scripture where it talks about these two women. They probably were prostitutes. It wasn't specified, but they were living in this space where they both had babies. One rolled over on her baby and killed the baby. Well, she called herself switching her baby with the other woman's baby in the room. And so when they went before the king, because they were arguing over the baby, the king said, in his wisdom, cut the baby in half. Well, the woman who was really the mother said, oh no, well then let her have it. He knew in his wisdom the real mother would not allow the baby to be killed. But because the other one was like, yeah, I'll take half the baby. What the hell are you gonna do with half the baby? So
Okay.
again, I use that to go with the show called Justified. The king was justified in making that decision. So just different
Oh,
aspects.
cool.
And so when we talk about the things in the Bible, how we can apply to things in your life, there is not one situation that you can encounter that you can't use the Bible to help you figure out to get through. So in that, I've used the Bible, the Word of God, the living Word of God, to really get me through not only my marriage, but my life. The grief that I've experienced, the depression that I've experienced. Even now, my relationships, even with my family, we are so much more intentional about speaking from our hearts, but making sure we mend anything that we may have said or did to offend each other. We are so intentional about that. My sisters and I, even my daughter. It's so funny because I'm one of those. You can rarely offend me, right? But one of my coping mechanisms is I laugh. I make jokes. And so if you're
Yeah.
serious, it very well may piss you off that I'm laughing in your face, right? So and when I say this is all my relationships, I was sitting there talking to my supervisor today, and she was like, "Is it really funny, or is that just how you deal?" I said, "Sometimes," and I'll sing, right? Sometimes for me to really keep from hurting you and saying what I really want to say, that could really, really, really be below the belt. I try to protect people from those relationships, and I've also learned not everything you think you need to say.
Yeah.
So that's helped me to find ways to become better and intentional about how I treat people, what I'm saying to them, how I'm handling them. And again, that came from my spiritual growth. I tell people all the time, especially my sisters, which they hate to hear it, but my aunt that that was murdered in the past or what have you, my goal is to see her again. And as a Christian, our belief is that you will be in heaven with them again, right? So I'm like, I gotta get to heaven, so I gotta overlook all this other foolishness and offenses that other people. Look, I tell them all the time, girl, look, I'm trying to get to heaven, so I can't go back and forth with you like I used to. So it's just different places that you are in your life, the way you view things, the way you grow. And to me, it's really how you identify how you'll handle situations. And someone like yourself, which we don't know each other personally, but someone like yourself may not need it to be grounded in the word of God to know right from wrong or to know how to be a loving person. But again, it's just different perspectives. I do daily devotionals. As a matter of fact, he spoke about that, about your relationship
Yes.
with God. And it's really before I even get out of my bed most mornings. Now I have to wake up a little earlier, but every morning before I start my day, I have to have the word of God in my ear. I have to either that or I'm listening to gospel music, something that'll encourage me, lift me up.
Okay.
Because girl, life gets too hard. You can
It
drive out
does.
here and somebody piss you off in traffic. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta have something you can hang on to that kind of will tie you down and make you reflect. It's not as bad as it seems, you know, because we'll get all up in our
Definitely.
feelings.
I will say this. I'm unchurched, but I am from Detroit, and I just recently moved back to Detroit. Detroit has like a really, really deep gospel root.
Okay.
So even though I don't go to church, I do listen to gospel music. So yes, I definitely feel that as part of something to woosah or even get you through some tougher times.
Absolutely. Because music ministers to you as well.
Definitely,
It
that's definitely true.
Yes, it does. And all gospel is a lot of times it's proclaimed words of the Bible. It is proclaimed scripture of the Bible. The battle is not yours, it's the Lord's by Yolanda Adams. It's scripture. There are so many things that you will hear again, and it also speaks to your heart. I don't know if you've ever heard of I don't know why it's Shirley Caesar.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in one of her particular songs, she says, you will never encounter God and remain the same. And for me
Yes.
that's true. And that's what Mike Todd kind of talks about. The uniqueness of your relationship with God will actually help you to form all your relationships with people because again, he's gonna hold you accountable. Your conscience, you feel it if you have basically mistreated somebody or
Oh, definitely.
you'll feel, but not everybody has a conscience because sometimes the way that they think, they're thinking they're wrongdoing, that they were right, that they were justified, that it was okay.
See, and I wonder, do you really think that, or are you just trying to make yourself feel better for actions that
Some people have
you
some
know
really messed up ways of thinking.
that's
Um,
true?
and I mean, even with hearing it, to me, comprehension is everything because you can hear it and not understand it. So you got to be able to apply it, and that's why it's I tell people all the time, like my middle sister, I will tell her, I don't think that it's a good idea just to read the Bible without being able to apply it. There has to be some interpretation, there has to be some understanding. Don't take it to try to interpret
Yeah.
it, which is why we've experienced the Bible being used against us in so many aspects.
Yes.
People have tried to use it against you because if you don't know it for yourself, then you're bound to pretty much believe whatever the hell somebody else says.
And also because you said about the comprehension
Right,
portion of it.
right,
Yeah,
right. So I
definitely.
enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it to anyone and to everyone because it applies to, like I said, every aspect of it. It speaks on the first relationship with yourself, your relationship with God. It speaks on all of your relationships. If with your parents, with your siblings, with your relatives, with your coworkers, and then it doesn't get to marriage until really the end. I mean, there's a little sprinkle of relationships throughout it. And because even in the video, he was like, it was so funny because he was saying about how some relationships you don't need to be in, but he says, but I'm not talking to the married folks because there's a covenant to that, right? But he put it all the way to the end because what he wanted to focus on was even in your singleness, how important that relationship is.
He definitely felt that. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from the book. And that embracing your singleness was so important.
Yeah. Um, if you are an avid reader and you're watching this video, Nako is listen. I don't know are you in Nako's reading group?
Yes, I just joined when you guys had her as the featured.
Good. Um, Nako has a knack for being a minister or ministering to her readers through her writings, through her blogs. She has this a group called Single and Okay. Have you subscribed to that? So
No,
you
no.
got to join that. And there's a lot of things that she speaks on because she's single as well, and she's spoken about on different platforms, uh, how different being in a dating scene, right? The things that she's encountered and basically what's her non-negotiables. Like, yeah, I can't deal. And I admire that about her because she's the same age as my daughter. And I admire her wisdom in being able to see that. But one of the things I believe we have not talked about in society as we're growing up. So you have a daughter or a son? Daughter.
Got it.
You can do great justice to her to teach her what relationship is, not just the intimate relationship, but even in friendships, right? What she should look
Yes.
for, what she should expect.
Yes.
You know, we get hung up in the Disney World seeing the princess, but being teaching them realistically, having these understanding that anybody that hits you, because see, then it'll become a little confusing because sometimes we discipline with a little, hit, but we don't hit from a place of anger.
No.
There's so many things to talk about, but as they grow and understand what real love is, it's not just a feeling, it's an action. We love from a place of selflessness, like as a mom, there is absolutely nothing I wouldn't do for my daughter. If me having give her my heart to live is what it's gonna be. You think about the movie John Q, right?
Yes.
You know, a parent, a parent's love should be, but not everybody's experience is that because
No.
everybody doesn't get that same experience. So in society, we say what it should be, but I'm all over the place. Let me get back to Nako's reading group. If you read Nako's books on so many different levels, she can speak to marriage, she can speak to relationships, she can speak to singleness, but she gives so many affirmations and gems in her book. Inhale, Exhale was the most recent one that she and I had our chat about. Um, but she has been writing way way longer than Inhale and Exhale. So jump into her catalog for some confirmations, for some good.
Yes.
Sakura Monique,
I definitely want to do that.
yes. Sakura Monique is a new author, a newer author, that new to me author. Let me say that, but she has a very big catalog. And this most recent book, The Mother and the Gentleman, is another book that really spoke to me. And again, there are a lot of gems. These authors,
Yeah,
it's amazing how they're able to give this wisdom. Love Belvin, of course, Christina C. Jones. And again, these are Black authors. It's Black romance. But for me, I always use this hashtag. There's truth in fiction.
definitely,
There is truth
definitely.
in fiction. My books, I can live in them. And if you guys know, y'all know I live in one book. But I can live in these books, and the lessons that you get from them, you can always tie to reality. So it definitely helps. I mean, erotic is nice, but you can only go so far with that. You know what I'm saying? It
That's
may
true.
fulfill one purpose, but these books can really help you through some things in life, help you to see things a lot clearer, and give you some great insight to life. So, and some great referrals. And I would say this is a 5 star. How would you rate this book?
Hmm.
And there's
So
no wrong answer, so don't feel
yeah,
compelled.
no. I think I 3.5, 4 stars. I think there's a lot of takeaways. I would like to hear more. Oh, I didn't talk about this. I kind of was looking for a little bit more guidance for people who, if your expectations are realistic, if you're walking with God, if you use your single time the way that you should have to develop yourself, then how do you win in relationships? Because I feel like that was one of the questions that came up when I was talking to my friends about the book. Yeah, if we're doing all of the things that he's talking about, and we're still not finding what we're looking for, then you know what do you suggest then?
Hmm, that's an interesting concept. And I think too, we live in this fantasy land sometimes, where we think it's supposed to always be glitter and
And then
gold.
happily ever after.
Yes, and sprinkles and cherry on top, and that's so not realistic. But like I told my daughter, because of course all of her friends getting married, they're having babies. Nika was going through the same thing, and she was sharing how that was exactly her story. She's all through her timeline, she's looking up and down, and she's seen it. And again, we have to remember that people only let us see what they want us to see.
That's
So
true.
we should not use uh, social media platforms, or even, the outward view of other people's lives to determine or measure the success of our own. I'm a true believer, especially after 9/11. Uh, we're right where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there. It's a season. It's a season that we're in. And we gotta work through it. It's Kirk Franklin even talks about in his songs about going through the storm, right? You gotta go through storms, and when it rains, we don't just stop what we're doing. We do what we gotta do, whether it's an umbrella
That's
we
true.
have, to cover us. And it's going sometimes it gets a little ugly. You might want to pull to
Yeah.
the side, but you got to get through. You got to get where you're going. You're not going to just let, unless it's flooding, you know. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the idea is to get, to get through, to get through. So I think that's what this book is intending to do, to help us to get through and to understand, because he even spoke on his parents, and he spoke on his early the beginning struggles that he had in his relationship. He's not
Yes.
he told you straight up, listen, I am not perfect. He and his wife both had slept with other people. Um,
Prior to marriage.
right prior to them being married. I was about to get that out, and I was trying, but yes, prior to them being married, he spoke on that because again, in their own immaturity. And I would say, even to speak to that, when we marry young, I would really encourage spiritual premarital counseling,
Mm.
unbiased, because I think things can be seen by somebody that really, you know what I'm saying? When I say unbiased, and I truly mean that, because a lot of times the people that are closest to us, they say what we want them to say, or what they think we want to hear, right?
Or they close their mind off to people that they feel are not best.
Absolutely. 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 So I think this book is a great read. Like I said, I give it a 5 star. I connected on every level. I don't necessarily agree with every single detail, but I
I
think
think it
it's
is specifically especially good for people starting off in life
in
before
life.
you get muddled down
That's right. That's
uh,
right.
with
Especially young
with all
folks.
kinds of, yes, especially young.
It can really be a guide, because, like he said, nobody had those conversations with him when he was coming up. So I think that is a general consensus that many of us are not having these conversations. So and look into these fictional books that we told you about if you just want something to connect it with. Believe me, there are so many. If you're watching this video, more than likely you're into Black romance. Um, but it's more than just romance. Like I said, there's some gems to be dropped. So I'll put all the details in the link below, in the description below. I'll also connect you with Sandra's link. Bourbon Street Bookers is definitely a fan of hers. Uh, and so we look forward to um, to hearing your thoughts and your views on this video. And if you've read the book or even watched, I'll put the link to Michael Todd's video. If you choose not to read the book and you rather just watch it, right? So you can watch the YouTube videos. It's about 8 or 9 videos that basically set the groundwork for him to write this book. So, and we'll chat with you. Thank you guys for joining us. Sandra, thank you for joining me. And when I
Thank you
put
for
out
having
that
me.
you did not hesitate, and I appreciate it. You stick around, and guys, I thank you for joining us tonight.